Okay, so we pick back up with example number 7. The standard is the square root function. So square root of x. Try to do a little bit better there. And if we look, like I said, parentheses, and our definition was given as parentheses, but I want you to think of grouping symbols of some sort. So if our x is in parentheses, or a square root, or let's see, absolute value, and possibly some other ones, we want to think of it as denoting our horizontal shifts. So when we see that in the square root, it's under the square root, and it's plus 1. So what does that tell us to do? Shift it to the left one. Good. So we want to take our f of x, go to the left one, and sketch. Moving on, now we have our absolute value. Absolute value is our v function, but this time they gave us f of x in a somewhat of a picture, and then they tell us absolute value of x minus 5. Well, what does that x minus 5 mean in the absolute value? Shift it to the right 5 units. So it looks like this is at 0, 0, so I want to move this thing to the right 5 units, which is about over here, and shape of absolute value looks like that. Okay, we have our cubic function, and our parent graph of that is going to be, let me make me a dot, this shape. And when we come over here using transformation, that tells us to shift what? Left 2 units. Shift to the left 2 units. So if I take that 0, 0 and I put it here, shift it to the left 2 units. Alright, now we have a couple of things going on. Use transformation. So all they tell us that our original function is the absolute value function. So which by parent graphs, being familiar with our parent graphs, or using plugging in values of x and y to plot this thing, we have this standard function. Now, this in particular is what we were just working with. It's inside the grouping symbol. If inside the grouping symbol is minus 6, that tells us to shift what? Right 6 units. But I also have minus 6 on the, or subtract 6 on the outside of that. So what does that tell us to do? Shift down 6 units. So basically what we want to do is grab this 0, 0 and shift it to the right 6 units and down 6 units. So my graph is pretty squished up over here. It looks like it's about right there. Do it in a different color. And so now we had 2 different transformation rules that applied in this particular one. Alright, reflections. That's when the graph of y equals negative, which means the opposite of f of x. It's reflected about the x-axis. Okay, so when we see this particular negative sign, that means we want to flip it, reflect it about the x-axis. First of all, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's do our parent graph. Our parent graph goes to the order pair 0, 0 and is a parabola right there. So now I know by this reflection, this negative out front, that I want to flip this thing. But before I do that, let's determine what's going on here. This is in a grouping symbol, so that tells me to shift what? Right 2. Shift to the right 2. And then the red part means and flip, reflect. Let's see. So let me go to the right 2 first. Right 2, and then I want to reflect about the x-axis.